Hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience. I know we got started a little bit later today. We had some traffic issues on I-70 and then tech issues with teams. So we are on now and ready to go. So welcome to this negotiations session, March 7th. So thank you for being here in person and online. So we're going to start really quickly just with kind of an explanation. We're going to go around and do introductions, answer a question, etc. But I'm going to start with we have some key people on our team that are out. Unfortunately, we've on Jcea, our team has been hit with some unfortunate, tragedies and things that have happened. That we do have Lisa, Brooke, and Christine out. So what we're going to do is get through as much of this language as we can. We want to keep the ball rolling and keep the forward momentum. But there is a possibility that we may be ending a little bit earlier tonight. For that reason, we may not caucus and return language this evening. So we just wanted people to be prepared for that. And so we will begin with some introductions. And also, I do want to make a quick announcement that JCEA is doing their Grub Club fundraiser for our kids, our emancipated students, and that does end tomorrow. So if you are planning to contribute to our Grub Club fund, either by bringing in an item or else contributing monetarily, we would encourage you to do so. All right, so I'm going to start. I'm Michelle Malis, and I'm a Spanish teacher at Green Mountain High School. I'm also the JCEA bargaining chair. And this evening, we are going to be, the question that I'm going to ask as we go around last week was, I believe it was Reads Across America Week. And so thinking about that, just really quickly, maybe just mention a book that you remember. What was the first book that you remember reading when you were a kid? And also, if there are any elephants in the room or any time constraints, that would be good for us to know about as we do that. So Michelle Malis, JCEA, and I will be here for the duration. I sort of already mentioned some elephants. I'll go over the agenda at the very end once it gets back to me. And as somebody who grew up in Iowa from the Midwest, one of the first books that I remember, like a real book reading, was like Little House on the Prairie. And that was a big one for, you could kind of relate because it was in the same geographical area. And I just have fond memories of reading that book. So I will pass it around to my left. So Steve.
Thank you, Michelle. Steve Landry, Executive Director of Employee and Labor Relations. No elephants, no time constraints. And I'm not sure I can go back as far to remember the first book I read, but I will share that I truly, I've read the books several times in my teenage years, but The Hobbit and The Fellowship were my favorite books.
Richard Sanchez. I teach 6th grade social studies at Fowl Middle School. I'm the organizing action team chair and also a member of this bargaining team. No time constraints, no elephants in the room. I just grew up reading the JCEA contract. No, I'm just joking. Goosebumps. Goosebumps for sure. Hardy Boys. Yeah, those are my books.
Awesome. Stephanie Jones. I am JCEA bargaining member and the behavior systems coach. And no elephants or time constraints. And my first favorite book was The Tawny Scrawny Lion That Turns Into a Vegetarian. So been destined.
Deanne Hoffman, principal at Hutchinson Elementary. I don't have any elephants or time constraints this evening. I mean, any Judy Bloom. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. Yeah, well, that's what I remember. Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm Beth Grebois, Director of Math and Science. I remember no elephants and no time constraints. I remember reading the Babysitter Club books and collecting all those and trying to get through them as fast as I could.
Dale Munholland, Jcea Vice President and Social Studies teacher at Pomona High School. No time constraints, no elephants, none of that. First real book, like chapter book that I read, not like little golden books or whatever. But the first chapter book was Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing.
Jennifer Kimson. I am one of the directors in Human Resources. No elephants, no time constraints for me. And mine is a golden little book. That is a fond memory that I have from childhood, The Pokey Little Puppy.
Caroline Frazee, principal at Arvada High School. No time constraints, no elephants. I think the one that I remember reading alone, and so I was a latchkey kid and was never allowed to watch TV. So any chance I got to come home and watch TV under no one knowing I did, but I came home and read Where the Red Fern Grows and ended up just sobbing. And my mom came home wondering why I was on the couch crying. So.
Michelle DeAndrea, principal at Bell Middle School. No elephants. I do have time constraints. I will be leaving after dinner. And we need a note taker. Just putting it out there. I see Richard has his finger on his nose, and so does Caroline. So, I have to say that Dale and Deanne and I are probably about the same generation. So mine was Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume as well. So that's what I remember. First book.
Hello, I'm Kendra Geis. I teach 5th grade at Swanson Elementary. No elephants, but the time constraint, I'll just let everyone know there's 53 days left until teacher's last work day and I get to retire. So that's my time constraint, 53. So that takes out spring break and stuff. And I too liked all the Judy Blume, Beverly Cleary, Laura Ingalls Wilder. But the first book that I remember reading was my grandma read it to me, and I was under 5. And it was a little golden book called The Color Kittens. And I just loved. I felt like I could read that book, even though I couldn't.
Grandma read it. That's okay. Anthea Justice, learning specialist at Wright Elementary. No elephants, no time constraints. Yeah, I would say definitely Beverly Cleary. Anything Ramona Quimby AJ, Beezus and Ramona. And then I remember the Little Mister books too, like Little Miss books. Those were probably some of my favorite. And then, all the books. The end. Your turn.
All right. Rob Cassidy. I'm a science teacher at Stanley Lake High School. Time constraints. The only thing I was thinking of, it's starting to snow, so that always makes me a little nervous. But other than that, yeah, no time constraints. Elephants, I don't really have any right now. Books, though, I don't know. The one, the first book I remember reading, I actually bought it at, the school used to have a thing, and you could go, and I took 39 of my own cents and bought The Little Choo Choo That Could. And so that was, profound, and it kind of set up how I try to live my life. And the other book, though, since that's not a real book, according to Dale, the other one that was really, really big in terms of my outlook on everything was actually Swiss Family Robinson. I read that. And I had a 45-year-old book that was, made long, long ago, and it had color plates and things. And I read that probably 6 times as a kid. And then I think I read to both my kids when they were growing up. So, yeah.
Maria Messer, Executive Director of Special Education. No time constraints, no elephants. I thought of 2 books. One, when I was really young, before the weird, creepy movie, The Polar Express. Was a big deal. I got the bell and all the things. And then The Velveteen Rabbit came to mind from when I was really young. I don't really remember how or who I read it with, but I do remember the book.
I'm Anna Bryant, 3rd grade teacher at Hackberry Hill. No elephants or time constraints. And I definitely remember One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish was my favorite. But then also, first chapter book was this sweet little story called Mandy, who I later learned was written by Julie Andrews, like famous singer. And it's about a little orphan girl who sneaks away from the orphanage, finds a cottage, cleans it up, and eventually learns that it's owned by a very wealthy family who need a daughter.
Good evening, Mike Freeman, Community Superintendent. No elephants, no time constraints. I grew up reading Zane Grey. Anybody know Zane Grey? Old Western novels. So like, so like on the farm, that's what we had. And I read a lot of them. Same story, a lot of cowboys.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Amanda Perazio. I'm the Associate Chief of Schools. And I have no time constraints and I have no elephants, except I'm feeling just a little distracted, just trying to make sure all the things are done in my head. And the book series that I used to love were the Boxcar Children. I loved going to the library, and that was the book that I would always check out as the next Boxcar Children. And I hated series like that because when I finished them, there was no more to read, and so I'd have to start another series. But I too read majority of the Goosebumps until they started getting weird. And then I was like, but I could read those books in 2 hours. I loved it.
So there we go. That was awesome. Thank you, everybody. That was one of my favorite things during school is the SSR time. I loved that. It was, a great way to, spend 30 minutes at school. And I get it. We're getting towards spring break, and I think we're all feeling it. It's been a week. So, all right. So just so that people can be prepared for what we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to be beginning with some returns, foxtrots, both of Article 10 collaboration, and then Article 20, which is professional behavior and educator discipline. Then we're going to move to an overview of cost of some of the articles we brought up to this point and also benefits. At that point, we'll probably be breaking for dinner. And then directly after dinner, Article 22, equity, with Bravo version, Article 9, student discipline, which is the District Bravo, and then finishing up this evening with Article 12, the Jcea Bravo version. So at this point, I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, everyone. We are going to start with Article 10, I believe, and Jennifer is going to link it in if she has not already done so. I'm on a different window, and I am going to present it. So we have one very minor change and are hoping very much to get to a tentative agreement on this article this evening. I am not presenting. I promise I'm attempting to present. Oh, we're on the JESPA link. We'll be right back. Don't worry, JESPA's not negotiating this evening. They negotiate on Wednesday nights. And so we're using their link for a quick minute. They don't mind. Try a different link, Brian, or the same link? Oh, different link. Got it. Okay. Brian, it says sharing is paused. It says I'm presenting. Oh, good point.
My team knows what I would say about this. Pen and paper never has a bad day.
He's not wrong. Pen and paper never has a bad day.
See, to keep refuting Dale, I once tried to use a pen when it was like 0 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and it didn't work very well. Pencil would work, yes.
That would be.
We had copiers. Yeah.
It is in the agenda, and there is one minor change. So let's, if everybody wants to click on 10, we'll take a look at it. All right, so everything in 10 has been highlighted in yellow from the blue changes to the red changes, except for one thing that we would like you to take a look at in, I'm sorry, I can't find it. Help team, where are we? Oh, here it is, 10-11. I couldn't find it.
Missing something. It looks like 10-5-2 has some blue that isn't highlighted.
Oh, I think because we agreed to I don't know why I didn't highlight it.
Is I just want to make sure that was agreed to.
Yeah, because it was the crossed outs and then we replaced it. And so I think we did. Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer's going to fix that. And then in 10-11, the last term that we have remaining. So currently we have district departments outside of the school setting will have collaborative decision-making processes, but then we say the word decision-making again. So it says have collaborative decision-making processes for gathering input, problem solving, addressing challenges, and informing decision-making with TOSAs assigned. So we would like to recommend that it simply say we'll have collaborative processes for all of those things, including informing decision-making. So that's it. We are just suggesting to reduce the redundancy of saying decision-making twice. Ooh. I'm not here.
So just looking grammatically at this, the way it's written, if that decision-making that's not yellow yet were there, then that would apply to gathering input, problem solving, addressing challenges. But if you take that one out, then the decision-making only applies to TOSAs. So would it be better to actually keep the decision-making at the start and take out the decision-making informing TOSAs?
So it's the TOSAs are the ones who would be involved in the collaborative processes, because TOSAs are who we are addressing, because that's who is a licensed educator working in a non-school based department. I could put TOSAs first, like we'll involve TOSAs in collaborative processes for gathering input, if that would make more sense grammatically, but. I see what you're saying, though.
right? Yeah.
Seems like weird to put them at the end.
Right.
So let me read it aloud one more time. District departments outside of the school setting will have collaborative processes for gathering input, problem solving, addressing challenges, and informing decision making with TOSAs assigned to those departments. So if it would make sense to move with TOSAs assigned to those departments up earlier, I can.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of what Michelle, I think, was saying was district departments outside of the school setting will have collaborative process with TOSAs for gathering input, problem solving, addressing challenges, and informing decision making assigned to those departments.
Yeah, I think I agree. So I don't know if somebody wants to
I'm
move that.
I'm happy to. Beth, does that make sense?
Yeah, so let's just move the with TOSAs. Collaborative with TOSA. Yeah, after processes with TOSAs assigned to those departments for gathering input, problem solving, addressing challenges, and informing. Yeah, I think that makes more sense grammatically. Great. Any other questions, comments, suggestions, changes? Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and call the question for my team. How do you guys feel? Are you okay with this language as it is? All right. And district team, I'm assuming you guys are thumbs up?
Consensus.
Okay, so we have TA'd.
Hey. And had we not started late, we would have had that tea in 5 minutes.
Right. Okay. Moving right along. So, all right, we're off to a roll here. So we're moving on now to Article 20. This was also the district Foxtrot. And Amanda, I'm assuming you will be presenting that as well. And for the folks at home, Article 20 is professional behavior and educator discipline.
Brian, are we closer? Are we trying? No, not yet? Okay, no worries. So if everyone will click on the link. I see you in there, Brian. Jennifer? Hey. Everyone should now have access. Is this true? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought she said, there you go. Oh, okay. She did say that. Okay. So in Article 20, I believe we had 2 points to address in this one. And the first one was the just cause statement. So again, we would, we recognize that these are the 7 tests of just cause. And go ahead.
Just really quickly, so we are at 20-1-5-1, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So we recognize and acknowledge that those are the 5 tests of just cause, and yet we still would like to maintain a definition of just cause itself. And so, and again, recognizing that some of those things, such as progressive discipline, are not always understood by those who are implementing this particular piece of the professional behavior and educator discipline article. So what we have suggested is just cause is defined as an action is supported, and we can change the just cause is defined as if we needed to because it sounds funny. An action is supported by just cause when it is 1, based on facts that are 1, supported by evidence, and 2, are reasonably believed by the employer to be true, and also 3, is not for any reason, arbitrary, capricious, or illegal reason. And then, I know we had one more piece in here. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find it because I feel like it was 20-2-3-2 regarding the Garrity statement. You asked that we put in the words including a principal in regards to providing an educator a Garrity advisement, and we agreed to that. I believe those are I'm sorry, I see one at the bottom. that says letters of direction are intended. For some reason, we did not previously highlight that, but we did agree to it. Whoops. Did I highlight it? There we go. Otherwise, that article is, that's all we had for that article.
Okay. Are there any questions about the just cause definition that anybody would have at this time? And as you're looking at it, I will just go ahead and say I don't think we're going to be able to TA this one tonight. Yeah, we definitely want to meet with our people about that first. Yeah, absolutely. So we will, if we may not be able to return that next week, but we will at the following bargaining session. All right, if there are no further questions for Article 20, we will continue moving on with our agenda. So the next item that we are going to be reviewing tonight is an overview of costs thus far, specifically as they relate to Articles 8 and 25 was my understanding. And then finally, benefits costs and benefits discussion. And hopefully we are going to be able to, because I do think we will need to have this live streamed. Okay.
So even if we need to take a couple of minutes to get the live stream up, I think that's important because you'll want to be able to view this, and I need to move it into Google as well. So let's take a minute or two. Thank you. I think so, yeah. Oh, whoops, I just realized I missed a link. I'm in. And it's going to let me share. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Renee. Okay. We lost Stephanie and we lost Rob. Don't worry, they're coming. Oh, and Michelle wants in. Come on in. Jennifer, I put this in the presentations folder. Okay. So we have a short slide deck. Jennifer linked it in or is linking it in, so you'll have access to it. And when I say short, there's unfortunately a lot of words on this slide deck, and I apologize for that. But we wanted to give you as much information as we possibly could in order to further understand.
We need access.
Sure.
We need access again.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm sorry, the presentation folder, Jennifer, I was referring to is not inside of the JCEA folder. Sorry about that. Oh, that's the old one. It's a PDF. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but thank you. Okay. So we want you to have the most, as much accurate information as you possibly can in order to make decisions moving forward and have the ability to prioritize from your lens as well as ours. And so we requested that some calculations be run from our Human Resources Department related to the costs associated with some of the proposals that we've received so far under Article 8, Article 25, an article that will soon be coming. It's not technically an article, but we know that we've had a collaborative work group that has been working diligently on the coach and activity stipend schedule, and that will hopefully be presented to us on April 4th by that collaborative team. And we wanted to give you some preliminary numbers around what that increase might look like, as well as a conversation around benefits and where we're thinking, where we're at, and where our heads are right now. So, with regard to Article 8, a few of the asks that have been proposed to us. First of all, there was an ask that all instructional coaches be increased to a 191-day work calendar year. Right now, they're working 185 days as a typical classroom teacher would be. The request would be to add 6 additional days to their calendar. Currently, we have 124 instructional coaches working across 117.1 FTE because not all coaches are full-time. Sometimes they are 0.8, sometimes they're 0.75, sometimes they are 0.5. So increasing that current FTE of 117.1 to a 191-day work year would be an increased cost of $349,038. That does include both the additional work days and the benefits associated with those days. That is also currently, and all of these numbers, I'll say this probably a few times, all of these numbers are based on the current salary calculator, not on any additional increases to the salary schedule that might occur as a result of our negotiations this spring. So if we negotiate in a COLA increase, that is not necessarily included yet. Actually, it's 100% not included yet. In some of these, they have included a step increase, however, just as an assumption that was made by the operations side of HR that was running these numbers for me. A full-time instructional coach was also a request at every building. So when we consider all schools at 119 schools, notice that is not all 137 plus schools. We did take out some of the schools such as AECs, option schools, and charters are not included in this. And so this is really just that 119 neighborhood schools serving students in K-5, 6-8, 7-12, 9-12, et cetera, type models. So in order to put a full-time instructional coach, increasing the FTE to have a full-time at every school, it'd be an additional $1,044,000. I'm going to do some rounding here. If we were to then also increase all of those instructional coaches to a 191-day work year, the total cost, including the cost I just gave you of the $1,044,000, would be $1,855,000 and a little bit more. Sorry. The next ask was around digital teacher librarians. So a request was made that we put a full-time digital teacher librarian in all schools, again, considering 119 schools. We currently have 98 DTLs working across 93.1 FTE. So if we were to increase that FTE, the total cost would be $2,861,996. The next ask was around increasing the work year for all special educators. So increasing that work year was a 10-day increase. Currently, as you know, counselors and cells work an additional 10 days, so they are under a 195-day work year contract. And in order to increase all special educators, I want you to know that I took a liberty and assumed that you wanted that at least at a minimum for building-based or school-based special educators. So from the equation, I removed any central-based special educators, not that they aren't in need of additional work days and more time to complete the requirements. What I included and requested to be included was learning specialists, mental health providers, including social workers and psychologists, speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists. And that additional 10 days for all of those employees that are school-based would be $4.9 million. The next request as part of Article 8 was that we include one counselor at every elementary school. Currently, 8 elementary schools already have a counselor, and please note that this figure does not include social emotional learning specialists. We removed that as it was a separate ask from the CELS allocation. And so that would be an addition of 66 counselors across all elementary schools, and that cost is approximately $7,241,000 and some change. An alternative option that was asked of us by, not by JCEA, but by Terry Walderman, who is our Executive Director of Student Success, was that potentially we could simply increase our CELS FTE and have a full-time CELS at every school. Unfortunately, I was not able to get that data disaggregated, so I wasn't able to include it in the overall cost. However, the number I did receive was that we currently have 103 CELS working across 94.6 FTE. That is not solely elementary schools, however. That is across all schools. And so I'm unclear on what that additional number would be. And so the additional amount that she gave me was $2,340,000. However, I believe that that is to increase CELS at every school, not just at elementary schools. And so I have removed that number from the next slide, especially since you didn't ask for it either. That was an alternative ask, and so I would get more information if that was something that you wanted to know. So on Article 8, the estimated cost proposal for the staffing changes, again, including the increased FTE for instructional coaches at all schools and a 191-day work year. And of course, we can manipulate this if you would prefer for it not to be one or the other. I included the $1.8 million, and I noted that the $349,000 is not included in the calculation, but that would be the difference if we were to simply take the current FTE of instructional coaches and increase their work year to 191 days. The second number, again, is the increasing to a full-time digital teacher librarian in every school, increasing all school-based special educators, as noted on the previous slide, to a 195-day work year, adding one counselor to all elementary schools. The red is not included because you didn't ask for it, and I don't have the most accurate number. That total Article 8 request dollar amount is $16,928,966. Once again, all of these calculations are approximate. They are all based on current staffing and salary schedules. They do not include potential COLA increases. But in some cases, they do include an assumption of one step. For Article 25, the ask that was tied to a dollar amount was a 3% stipend for all high school nurses. We believe that the number of high school nurses is at 20, and that additional cost for a 3% stipend is $41,205. A stipend is typically figured on step 1, lane 1, not typically, often figured on step 1, lane 1 of the salary schedule. So that's where we took that amount, and the benefits were included in that calculation. For coaches and activity stipends, again, this is going to be presented at the negotiation session on April 4th. Currently, what we've had to do is look at the last full year that we spent on coaches and activities sponsors to ensure that we had a full understanding of what it costs for 1 year of coaches and activities sponsors. So what they did was they took the full amount spent in 22-23, which was almost $4.7 million, and they applied the new proposal. So their new proposal includes some percentage of increases, step increases, and some targeted position adjustments within the salary schedule. So they applied that new proposal to that base of from 22-23 with those same coaches and figured that the additional cost would be $1.1 million. Additionally, this group would like to propose some new stipends. And those new stipends will exist in various places on the proposed salary schedule for coaches and activity sponsors. Using the median stipend amount for all of those coach and activity sponsors, because as you know, they're in different places on the schedule. They used the median amount and figured that additional cost would be just over $1 million, so $1,060,000. And that is across approximately 246 new stipends, so new coach or activity sponsors. And that's not 246 just in one, it's 246 across the district. So it's every school will get this activity sponsor stipend. Every school will get this coach sponsor or coach stipend, etc. So that approximate total increase for the coaches and activity stipends is $2.1 million. Again, not taking into account any additional COLA that might go onto that schedule as well. So all of those estimated costs for proposals so far, and I did take that out, is just over $19 million. So again, that includes all of the requests for Article 8, Article 25, and the coach and activity sponsor stipend, which is to be determined. Any questions on that so far? That was a lot. And before we move into our benefits conversation, I'd like to entertain any questions on that. Anthea?
Yeah, just going back to slide 4 when we're looking at the special educators, I had asked for some data in terms of we currently have 3 days added, and just trying to navigate that number because again, I don't necessarily know how many learning specialists, mental health providers, SLPs, OTs, PTs we have in the district. So I feel like that would be very helpful to have that to kind of navigate that number just because I currently don't know how much we're using in terms of the 3 days. And just also we have quite a few positions that are contracted. So I just want to kind of have those numbers to navigate that because obviously that could help us.
And I have them all for you. Actually, I apologize. Yeah, I intended to send them to you before tonight, but I will have them to you by the end of the day tomorrow.
Awesome.
They came in 12 different emails, so I have to put them all together to send to you.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
Go ahead, Stephanie, and then Rob.
You may have adjusted this and I missed it, but throughout it said some were on a increase of a step and some weren't. Is that laid out in the slide deck as to who was okay, they would get the step increase and so that cost was calculated? I just missed it.
So I actually think that Laura put it in all of them. I just didn't put all the parentheses there every single time. So I do think that she made an assumption of a step for every single one. However, I don't believe that the coach and activity stipend has that same effect. It's not really a step, it's just a percent increase. Right? Or do they have lanes? They have years, yeah. So they would have a step, but that, I don't believe Patrick assumed that in here. Rob?
I have a few questions here. One, just relates to in general, we have a declining enrollment of students. And I know our building is cutting back how many educators there'll be there next year, according to at least current not assuming any of the stuff that you presented here. Do you have current district figures for JCEA area educators, what that total number will be next year as compared to this year? So otherwise, how many positions are being cut in the JCEA bargaining unit?
So Brenna will have to give us those numbers. My hope would be that just as in years past, we would have a presentation provided by our budget department. So Brian, Brenna, whomever, of the current forecast for number of staff and for what we are expecting from the state at the beginning of April.
At the beginning, okay. Because I think this year there were about 100 fewer JCEA educators than last year, which obviously affects these figures here.
Sure.
Also, maybe going a little bit on what Anthea said there, in terms of contract employers, I know I was talking to a JCEA member who said that both of the JESPA workers that she works with as aides in the classroom were actually contract workers and not members of JESPA. So what I'd like to know is, since it does relate to finances, it does relate to the tub of money that basically is there for Jeffco to use. What is the number of JESPA employees who are contract workers? And what is the pay of those contract workers compared to the pay of JESPA workers? And same thing for JCEA workers. How many JCEA area educators are there, and who are not actually in JCEA but are contract?
Okay, and I do have that.
And also, what is the pay that the district is expending on those versus?
Sure. And I have already received that data around JCEA contracted workers, and so I'll make sure I share JCEA type contracted employees, and I'll be able to share that with Anthea and that group tomorrow. And then I'll request the JESPA because I don't have that yet.
Okay, and I'm just asking that because that relates to the overall money picture. So, and it does relate to JCEA because we are working with those people. And yeah, thank you.
All right, Richard.
Yeah, I was just curious about special ed. Like, do we have like a number around like how much was underspent for special education last year?
Underspent versus budgeted?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
I have the total budgets, but I'd have to ask about the underspent.
Okay.
I can ask for it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Maria.
I think do you have any more details about your question about specific underspend in special ed, so I can do something?
Because what there was projected, there was unfilled positions for special education, and then we had budgeted for that, and then those positions didn't get filled. So there's an excess of money that was budgeted that didn't get spent.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we will move on. Okay, so we would like to address a few of the questions and interests that have been shared with us regarding benefits. So on February 1st, the JCEA shared with us an interest in a benefits proposal, and some of those interests included shifting to a percentage-based model of our employer contribution, which the proposal was an 80% contribution of employer costs toward total medical premiums. Additionally, another interest was shared with us that part-time employees should be eligible for benefits and should receive a district contribution. Currently, that is at a 0.75 FTE or greater, which is currently under our eligibility. The proposal included that employees at 0.5 FTE or greater would be eligible for benefits and are eligible for a district contribution to be prorated. Thirdly, the third interest that was shared with us was that new hires should be eligible for benefits on the first of the month following their date of hire. And currently, employees are eligible the first month following 30 days of employment. Please note that our benefits team is working on cost estimates for bullets 2 and 3. However, we do have cost estimates to share around that first bullet. And so additional information may be necessary to share at a future date. So currently, you can see that our annual cost is in the blue, the top chart. So as everyone is aware, we have Aetna and Kaiser plans, and our premium averages are listed here. So the total premiums are approximately $72 million, with the employee contribution on average being 24,700,000. I'm sorry, not on average, the percent is the average. The employee contribution of that amount is currently $24,709,100. That is a average employee contribution of 34% out of the total 100% that costs premiums. That is a Jeffco cost or a district cost of $47,357,900. The HSA contributions are below, and HSA contributions often occur, so everyone is aware, when you don't use the full allocation of $569 per month, such as if you are an employee-only premium plan holder, you can use the remaining dollars to contribute to an HSA. So this year, we are anticipating rate increases from Kaiser and Aetna. Kaiser, a 6.9% increase in our premiums. Aetna, a 7.9% increase, for a total premium cost increase, a total premium cost of $77.6 million, which is a total increase of $5.2 million. As everyone is aware who is sitting at the table or is currently employed in Jeffco, we did agree to an increase of monthly district contribution last year by $20 for JCEA and JCAA and $30 for JESPA, which was an investment of approximately $1.8 million. Should we remain the same and not make any changes, not that we are proposing that is just a possibility, right? If we were not to change anything, and employees would take on all the costs of the increase, we would be looking at employee contribution to $29.4 million, which would increase the employee average to paying 38% of the total premium. Based on the JCEA proposal request, which was, again, the district to support 80% of the total cost of medical insurance premiums. Again, the current district cost is $47.7 million. The requested district cost, if we were to take on that 80%, is $62 million. That requested increase in district cost is $14.5 million. Once again, these figures are based solely on employees who are currently part of the insurance plans. So certainly, there's always a possibility when we modify things or when former employees move on and new employees come in, that those numbers will change based on the number of employees who take advantage of our medical plans that are available. So you can see those cost projections down below. Again, this year to next year, if employees were to only take on 20% of the total premium cost. So a few additional pieces of information, and we do have at our disposal quite a bit of information. So if any additional information is desired by anyone on the team or on either team, we do have members of the Benefits Advisory Committee here with us. We also have a lot of individuals who have a lot more information than we do. So currently, just for your knowledge, Kaiser, and this is really for my knowledge, I wanted to know this, our Kaiser employee cost ranges between 18% employee coverage or employee cost to 70% of the employee cost. Again, the average for the Kaiser plans is 35.5%. And actually that should say 0% to 70% because the no cost employee only plan is on Kaiser. There are currently 4,950 employees enrolled under Kaiser coverage. For Aetna, the employee cost ranges from 3% of the total premiums to 67% of the total premiums for an average of 31.7%. There are 2,053 employees enrolled in coverage under Aetna. There is currently a no-cost option, which is under a Kaiser plan for employee-only coverage, and we share in your interest that you've shared with us in maintaining a no-cost option for employee-only coverage moving forward. In FY25, so that's fiscal year, for those of you who are not familiar with that type of language, we will be entering a request for proposal process or an RFP for healthcare benefits. And again, for those of you who are not familiar with an RFP, basically we put out a request for any company that offers medical benefits to propose to us what they might be willing to offer and what might be beneficial for our employees. And so we are going to enter into that process next year. Additionally, we are in the process of exploring the adoption of a new enterprise resource planning system, or an ERP system. The ERP system is what we refer to as ESS, or Employee Self-Service, or PeopleSoft. Our PeopleSoft manages a lot of information, including our payroll, our learning and development, our you name it. A lot of our different costs that we need to keep organized. A lot of what else does it cover? Assignments, licensures, evaluations, accounting codes, all kinds of different information lives in this system. All of our purchasing systems live in ESS or PeopleSoft, and it has become an overloaded system, and we are ready for a refresh. So our hope is that with this new ERP system in the future, we will be afforded greater flexibility in applying variable technical factors that may be necessary in differentiated employer contributions moving forward. So one of the things that has been holding us back is the need to have this information as quickly as possible so that IT, or the people who work on PeopleSoft, can make all of this happen in the background. We do not believe it should take 3 months to make this happen. And so we're looking forward to a new system that is more flexible and more intuitive and able to make that happen under our timeline, not its timeline. And finally, the last slide I have for you. While a percentage-based model may not be where we land for this cycle, we are open to further discussion and exploration of this type of model for the future, especially with the RFP process and the adoption of a new ERP system. However, the district does remain committed to employer coverage that mitigates the annual premium increases imposed on employees. We do not wish to ask our employees or ourselves to shoulder the entire cost of premium increases year over year. The March 15th deadline, while ideal, is not a requirement, and our executive director is aware of that. However, we acknowledge the need to communicate with all employees as early as possible to afford them and us time to make educated decisions prior to the open enrollment window. Additionally, we do not wish to put upon our benefits team the requirement to open a second window because of a change in costs, which has happened in the past, and it's not a desirable outcome that we have. And finally, employee compensation is the top priority that has been shared with us from our Board of Education and from our superintendent. And we believe in the importance of negotiating benefits in conjunction with compensation. We find that to be important and valuable as we talk about ensuring that our employees are compensated well and competitively with our neighboring school districts. And so with all of that information, we do need to know, and not necessarily this evening, but what is most important to us as we move forward in determining how to do so effectively and at the benefit of all, is we need to know the priorities. So you've seen a lot of cost estimates this evening, and it's important to us that we know your priorities, just like you know that our number one priority is compensation. And we have been told that multiple times. We were told that again this week by our superintendent, that is our number one priority. So that is all I have, and looks like Dale has the first question.
I think our number one priority, I guess, would probably be compensation as well, right? I mean, everybody likes a little bit of change in their pocket. But the other things that we presented in Article 8 with the nurses and everything, I think were also priorities. And so I think the way I would see it is that this would have to go back to the district, and you tell us what your priorities are, because the teachers and the people that were here, they cannot continue to do what they were doing and not be compensated for it. They're doing a lot of work outside of their contract, outside of their work days, and they're doing it for free. And the district is benefiting from it. And they can't do it. People are worn out, people are burned out, and people are leaving. So we feel, or I feel, I shouldn't speak for the team, I guess, that what was presented is really what people needed in the district to continue to serve our students and work for their schools, their students, and the district. And I know this is a lot of money. We get it. So we need to know what the district is willing to pay so we can tell the other people, don't work for free any longer.
Thank you, Dale. Richard?
Yeah, I kind of want to just second what Dale was saying with this priorities. That's not our job to decide on what the priorities are, because that's divisive. That's going to divide our bargaining unit if we say that so and so's position or they should get this over that. And this reminds me of last year when I was at North Nevada, and we had to go to a vote on whether we were going to keep an IC or a DTL, and how that just wrecked staff culture. And a bigger scale like this, that will just tear apart our bargaining unit. But while I'm sitting here, and I'm just a 6th grade social studies teacher, so I don't understand big finances. Can I play queen for a day, or king for a day even? I don't like to say queen for a day. It's okay. It's the year 2023 or 2024. But what were to happen if we were to just pay all this? What if and I woke up tomorrow and everything was just paid for, and we got everything that we wanted? What would happen?
Many things could happen. When you say everything that we wanted, I don't know what you want in compensation yet. And so, but if everything on here, we probably could just pay everything on here and not have any compensation increases. That's not our desire. Our desire is to increase compensation because we know and acknowledge and own that we are dropped down in competitiveness compared to our surrounding districts. And we're not okay with that. We want you as educators to be paid well and competitively. We want to retain and we want to attract educators to Jeffco. It's important that we are able to compete in that area. If we were to give you the compensation you want, that I can only anticipate what you would like, and all of this, we'd probably be able to do it for 1 year and never again, because we would have to spend our reserves so far down that should a tragic event happen and no one come to our rescue, such as the state or federal government, we would have no money left. Not that we don't want to do that. I want you to know that we're not saying that we don't want all of these things to happen. We agree that special educators' plates are full. They are over full. As a matter of fact, 10 days probably won't do it, right? 10 additional days. A learning specialist probably could use 30 additional days. Not that they would want to work all summer long, right? I've watched the deterioration in the amount of time that you have had to spend, and I want you to know you're not alone. We do it too. I work at least 60 hours a week, another 3. Now, I get it. I'm in a different salary schedule than you are. I have a different role. And I work the whole year long instead of having a few extra vacations. But still, it's not enough. And I'm with you. The unfortunate part about public education is we work with a finite amount of money. If we had an infinite amount of money, there would be plenty for all.
And I'm sorry, I did have one more question, so I really apologize to my colleagues here. This exploring of the new ERP system, does that cost money to get the new system?
The system itself?
Yes.
Yes.
And do we know how much money that costs off the top of our head?
I'm sorry, I don't. And of course, whatever the new system costs, we won't have to then continue paying for the old system. But go ahead.
Yeah, we won't know the cost until we put out an RFP, get some proposals from companies, and then then we make a decision of which direction to go, given what the system can do and does it meet our needs, and then also considering the costs as well.
Kendra and then Rob, I think. Oh, Rob and then Kendra. Sorry.
10 minutes. Although now I'm like, all of a sudden everything went away. So a couple things. One, we hear every year kind of a doom and gloom thing from you guys in terms of finances. And last year we went to the brink of impasse. Like we were within like that far of impasse last year, in my opinion. And once again, we're hearing there's a big cost to a lot of these things. When you look at the actual what ended up happening, despite the forecast of a 30 or 27 million or something dollar deficit last year, I think our $213 million overall reserve plunged all the way to $211 million with the dire forecast and going to impasse almost. So all that like concern amounted to a $2 million spend down of a nearly $250,000 reserve, or getting up approaching that. I think so. There was somewhere 26. I'm going off the top of my head, but $26 million underspend of what was thought to be. Well, that's actually more than a lot of what is in like the Article 8 thing. So can we assume, or when can we get data that would show whether this year we're going to have a similar underspend? So actually we can just insert that $19 million ask into that underspend, or, into last year's underspend, because, that money didn't get spent, so it has to go somewhere. And I guess integrated with that is also, I agree with you that we really should be talking about all these things together. We need to talk about the underspend. We need to talk about the benefits, the various article costs, and compensation together. When the School Finance Act comes and we are able to talk actual compensation amounts, would we then be able to integrate that in with the benefits discussion and still be able to provide time for IT to do their thing? And so I guess, can we have a holistic conversation of all the things that cost money and end up with a result that, both the district team and Jcea team are like, okay, we have this much money and we're okay with kind of this mix of spending?
That's our hope, absolutely. And as you know, even when the School Finance Act doesn't get determined until the first week in May, oftentimes we go off of our projections, and certainly we're as close as we possibly can be. And I would like to, again, say that either Brenna or Brian will be coming. I'm planning to invite them at the beginning of April to provide that educational spending and funding landscape for us, including the information that you've noted around the underspend of what was projected around spending on reserves. You are 100% right, and we've been afforded for 3 years the ESSER funding that has allowed us to move a lot of costs off of what we were anticipating having to use general funds for. And unfortunately, as everyone is aware, that is no longer going to exist, right? As of June 30th, anything we have not spent is no longer ours, and we don't get to continue it because it's more or less over that federal funding stream. And so 100% we will and would like to have conversations starting at the very beginning of April. April 4th is our first bargaining session, and we'd like to kick that off with a conversation around potentially compensation benefits proposal from the district side, along with the financial landscape.
And we could still have a percentage-based benefits.
Potentially, we're not saying no to a percentage-based. We're just telling you what it costs, and that we have an interest in elevating compensation and negotiating the two together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Kendra?
All right, I guess I don't know if mine's a question or more of a statement or a comment. I'm just wondering about school consolidation and how that plays into finances. So last year we closed 16 elementary schools, and this year we have some middle schools that are closing. And the premise was that we have fewer students to fill these seats, and so let's consolidate into fewer buildings and create a more equitable, excellent student experience. And so I feel like those things have happened, but the inequities still exist. And the money that seems to have been freed up in that consolidation hasn't necessarily leveled out that playing field. And so I'm thinking of, my school, for example, we didn't get the students that we were projected to get the way that consolidation ran. And so we are still under 400 students, but we're more impacted. And we would still have to make a decision between buying up our instructional coach and our DTL and not necessarily having the money to do that. So I guess I'm just wondering what the cost savings of consolidating schools were and how that influences the budgetary, outlook, and how is it creating equity when we still have inequities?
So I would need Brenna and Brian to give you the actuals that were saved. It's much less than I think a lot of us anticipated, because certainly, although we did close schools, we didn't lose all of the students from the schools we closed, right? Nor did we lose all of the educators from the schools we closed. Not that we didn't have some attrition of both students who either left the district or never returned, or teachers who left the district because of retirement or choices to go elsewhere. And so some of those costs were deferred to other buildings, whether it was the receiving school that was identified or not. And so some of those costs just moved. And we do continue that even with consolidations to have to experience declining enrollment, even with that. But to give you the actual costs, I'm more than happy to have Brenna and Brian share those in that presentation. They have them, they've shared them prior. I apologize that they're not in my head. I feel like it was around $10 to $12 million, much less than we were maybe initially thinking that it might be, or maybe even anticipating in our own, brains on what we thought it would be. But I will definitely have them include that in the presentation. Anthea, did you have another question?
I want to start by saying I don't want to take us off the conversation of compensation because it's important. And like Dale said, it's really hard to prioritize when we have so many people just drowning in what they're doing. And so thank you for acknowledging that and recognizing the fact that we are all working well outside of the 40-hour work week. However, I'm struggling with the fact that when we talk about time and we talk about PD and we talk about all these things that we are charged with doing, that we're not looking at cost neutral things that could help our workload. And so when we're kind of nickel and diming, percentages of how much plan time we can have for this or that, for our PLCs, for PD time, I really challenge this team to take a look at what are the things that we truly have to do and to stick to those. So PD, that is mandatory. Not having meetings for the sake of meetings, and also honoring the fact that teachers need to do the work that they need to do in their classrooms, and when they have that time, that it is sacred. And so I feel like we have to be willing as a district and as administrators to take stuff off plates and be okay with that, because at the end of the day, we have to do what's best for kids. And when we have people in front of them that are constantly thinking about their to-do list or the meeting they have to have or the planning that they don't get because they're having a data team meeting or a PLC or something that is taking their time, then we need to look back at Article 5 in these articles and be okay with saying you can have 100% of it, because that's what's going to be best for kids and best for you and best for keeping people in this district. So that when we look at compensation, we can pay it not only with monetary, because obviously it's finite in the sense that we only have so much funding and we only have so much time, but also that then we like those days when we do have an opportunity to not meet with students and to take time, that it's okay to say we can have the whole day. So I think we need to get there.
Thank you. And yeah, I appreciate the no cost option, and that thinking around that. I just really appreciate that that idea and thought that you put out on the table.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to kind of back up what Anthea said there. Just tell a little personal story that yesterday I got to school and I had things worked out so that I'd do this during this planning period, and then I had classes and whatever, and then in my 7th hour I was going to do this grading and this prep and things like that, and then all of a sudden I got a note from the office saying, oh, by the way, can you cover this block period for an hour and a half? And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I did, and it was fun, and it was a good time. They were cooking, and I got all this great food from South America. So it was wonderful being with the kids there and experiencing another class. So I'm not complaining about the situation, but as a result of that, instead of doing my hour and a half, and I probably would have had another half hour or so of work there, I instead went home and ate, while my wife was making dinner, I spent an hour and a half, and in there I spent an hour and a half, 2 hours doing the work that I'd been planning to do in 7th hour. And I think pretty much every educator in the room does the same thing. And in all those cases, that is the district counting on the fact that educators are like, okay, we'll do whatever we need for the kids. And if that's give up 2 hours of our evening, that's giving up 2 hours of the evening. And the problem is when that happens, day after day after day, that starts to wear on people, and our life balance, our life-home balance gets impacted, because all of a sudden the 2 hours that I was going to use just, relaxing is now doing schoolwork. And I don't know. So I'm kind of backing up Anthea's statement that, we need boundaries that are there.
Do I have any more questions from my team or comments, concerns? Thank you. You guys all asked really great questions. I actually have some to finish us out here. So I want to bring us back to the benefits piece. And I just want to reiterate that the reason that we wanted to move to a percentage system prior to an RFP was so that we could really be sure that we were pushing for the best possible coverage, best possible plans, putting it out there to have the to have good choice, but also to maybe, like, we're a huge group of people, and so we are good business for somebody, and so maybe if we can create some competition between them too. I just feel, and a lot of people feel that, I don't know if this is the best we can do, but it certainly isn't good enough. I mean, we have people who are putting off major medical decisions because they can't afford it, because that means they can't pay their mortgage. That means they can't pay for gas or childcare. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. This is a real issue in this district, and I can't handle getting story after story after story and being like, I don't know how to help. I don't know what to do. And so the percentage system was meant to, and again, for lack of a better word, because we want everybody to have skin in the game and to fight for the best possible deal. And so I think that's something that's still a huge interest to us as JCEA moving forward before this RFP process. Secondly, with what you had said about the new ERP and how you could do the contributions faster, could you dig into that a little bit more? What does that mean?
So right now we have built out so many add-ons to our current ERP system that the system has become inflexible, right? So we have to have specialists know how to make the adjustments and the changes, and to do so is a process that should not take or require the work that it does. A new ERP system should allow us to modify whatever it is that we need to modify, whether it's a percentage of contribution, whether it is that only Title I teachers receive a stipend, that we don't have to track that our special educators asked for 3 extra days on a random Google spreadsheet somewhere. Like, we should have a system as an organization such as ourselves, just to your same point of, we are a large organization. We should have a system that works for us instead of us having to navigate all of these like different coding and different technical workarounds to an antiquated system. And so that's that's one reason that we'd really like to have this not be in place necessarily, before it happens, but just to know that it will be happening potentially simultaneously as the RFP.
So you're saying that could be in place by 2025? No.
Unlikely.
Okay. So then would that mean that when we were negotiating, if we decided that on May 8th we wanted to do the district pays 80%, we pay 20%, the system could do it, we wouldn't have to negotiate those benefits earlier? Is that what that would mean?
We would need to make that happen on the back end. If that is what we reached this May 8th, then we would have to make that happen.
Okay. And then the other piece of this, and I don't want to, all my colleagues on my team have made very good points, but, costs have gone up, right? Like every time we go to the grocery store, every time we go to the gas station, when we're buying almost anything, costs have gone up. But it seems like, especially the cost for teachers hasn't. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a Jeffco issue. That's a statewide problem. Like the underfunding in this state is criminal for education, and it has been for a long time. And I feel like every year I come to bargaining and I beg the district, and I know you've got lobbyists out there, but we need to tell the state, this is what education costs. This is what it costs to have an instructional coach in every school. This is what it costs to have a DTL. This is what it costs to create exceptional experiences. Here's your bill. Rather than saying, you know what, we're going to ask our teachers to continue to do more and more and more and burn themselves out and harm their own mental and emotional health so that you can get us at a bargain. And it hurts. And what we're having is a situation where our teachers are deciding, I can't do this anymore. I need to retire early for my good health, to take care of my health, or I need to leave this profession. And we don't have people going in getting degrees. All right. Like the last statistic I saw was something like 4% of people in university now are getting a college degree. That's dropped from, at one point it was 20 or 21%. And I understand, like people do this because they love it, because they care about their kids, because they love what they teach. But at the end of the day, like if they're not able to take care of their own health, if they're not able to provide housing, doesn't matter how much they love it. And so these things are all priorities. I don't know how else to say it. Our kids need that if we're going to provide exceptional experiences. And so we got to find a way. I understand that the legislature is looking at buying down the BS factor, which we know is wonderful news. Okay, but still that brings us to 1989 levels of funding, which does not account for changes in mental health supports and technology, et cetera. And so, we need to continue pushing on the state and saying, this is what it costs to do education here. Okay, and this is how you need to fund us. And if you need to underfund something else for a while, then, we've been underfunded for 12 years, 14 years. So thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
And just so you're aware, in addition to our lobbyists, we do have a strong superintendent advocate in Tracy Dorland. She joined a group of Front Range superintendents recently to hear the presentation around buying down the BS factor that the legislatures are very proud of themselves for doing. And so the superintendents went and said, thank you, and 1989 was nearly 40 years ago. So we're going to need you to do better. And so I do want you to know that that we do have a strong advocate in our superintendent, as well as the lobbyists that we both send down to the Capitol.
It was a whole Taylor Swift ago. So yes, it's time.
That was an entire Taylor Swift ago.
All right. unless there are any further comments, questions around this presentation, we will take this back and, of course, digest and discuss. And at this point, our dinner is set up and ready to go. So now would be a great time to take a dinner break. And I think we could come back at 6:40. Does that sound okay? Half an hour. And we'll be starting with Article 22 at that time. Thank you. Thank you. session here on March 7th. We are back from our dinner break and ready to keep going with an exchange of proposals. Before I do so, I would like to thank Warren Tech for providing our meal this evening. So it was wonderful sandwiches and cookies. So thank you so much. It's much appreciated. So that being said, we are going to continue our work this evening with Article 22. This is a District Bravo version for equity. And I believe I'll be turning that over to you, Amanda, when you are ready.
Okay, so Article 22. Is it linked? Do you have access? Jennifer is linking it right now. Okay, so in Article 22, we have accepted your proposal to add in to the equity in parentheses, racial, sexual orientation, sex, gender identity, and or expression, to cross out the word gender since that is now already described, and then all the rest stays the same. Down in Article 22-2-1A, excuse me, it was the cookie, sorry. Although we would ideally love to get to a percentage of our staff that matches and reflects the racial, ethnic, and linguistic diversity of our students, we're not sure that that is ever going to be attainable, although we 100% are committed to continuing to identify strategy that attracts, retains, recruits employees that do more closely reflect the racial, ethnic, and linguistic diversity of our students. And so we've simply returned that language back to more closely because obviously that is 100% something we're committed to and an effort that we want to continue. In letter F of that same article, we have accepted the proposal around microaggressions. In 22-3, our Equity Ombuds program, we have accepted the language around the making the Ombuds contact information available on our internal website and publicizing the existence and purpose of the Ombuds person for our employees to be aware of. Additionally, our superintendent wanted me to remind you that we are overhauling our website right now, and soon we will have, we're hoping to move toward a virtual assistant for any person who visits either the external website or the internal website and has a question. For example, they could type in the word harassment, they could type in discrimination, they could type in equity, and it will pull up and direct you to any information that might be connected to what you're looking for. And so we're hoping that our website is not only going to have the Ombuds contact information, but even more accessibility for all of your needs. And hopefully that will switch over at the end of March to be a different look on the internal website. And we have also accepted the identities. Let's see. The Equity Ombuds will have the skills required to engage with people from different cultures, backgrounds, and identities, and have a fundamental understanding, et cetera, et cetera. We accepted that. As far as the Ombuds will, we've made some modifications and combined two sentences together to be more concise in this particular section. The Ombuds will be an independent liaison to employees of color, as well as those who identify as LGBTQIA+, for the purpose of receiving reports of acts of discrimination and bias-motivated harassment. Although the words homophobia, transphobia, and discrimination were previously spelled out, we felt as though we should be inclusive of all bias-motivated harassment that may include any or all of those. Down in 22-4, we did some rewriting and moving around. So we would like to propose that this that this article be titled Non-Discrimination Protections for Protected Classes. We want to be inclusive both of our current protected classes and, of course, any protected classes that may also present themselves or change in the future. So we have started down here at 2241 with state and federal law, as well as district policy, require that all district programs, activities, and employment practices are free from discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, transgender identity, and gender expression. The district will adhere to all state and federal laws, as well as district policies related to equal opportunity employment, harassment prevention, and non-discrimination. We felt as though that was very much encompassing of all that you were hoping to have included in the previous two articles, and even more expansive to other protected classes. We have accepted the proposals on article renumbered to 2242, as far as employees having the right to determine their names that they are used to refer to them. And also 2243, if a transgender or transitioning employee makes a request to collaborate on a written transition plan. Of course, we would like to honor that request as well. And finally, in 2244, we would like to include regarding the training, as required by Colorado Senate Bill 296, SB 23-296, the district shall provide training to all employees about harassment and discrimination beginning no later than July 1st, 2024. Training will be aligned to models recognized as best practice in Colorado and on the timelines required by Senate Bill, I should have put in there 23-296. And for awareness, that Senate bill actually does outline very specific information related to the training, such as how frequently it is to occur. Don't quote me, but I believe it's no less than every 3 years after the initial training is to occur. That is all that we have for that article.
Thank you so much for presenting that. I'm going to give my team a moment to look it over to see if they have questions. I also have some guests in the audience, which if they should have questions, I would invite them to the table to ask those or make any comments that they would like to make. So, all right, so if you want to come right up there.
And please let me know if you'd like me to scroll anywhere in the article. Of course.
I think back down to where the red started. Keep going.
Okay. The ombuds?
No, past that.
There you go.
Yeah, here. I guess one question, or I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but I appreciate trying to like consolidate and make more sense. I feel like some of the explicit language around protection from like administrative actions or people in the community that may be out to get a certain kind of people, I feel like some of that might be getting lost. And I feel like that was sort of the most important thing behind all of this, the intention of this. And then also that piece for in 2242 that was struck. I don't know if that really has been put back in any way. I feel like that was pretty important. Teachers being protected and helping students with their right to non-discrimination, including blah, blah, blah.
So just for awareness, Senate Bill 296 actually addresses student discrimination and harassment as well. And so our hope with what was down below is that all of that training would include information related to what you've requested regarding both educator protections and student protections. However, we're certainly open to any adjusted modifications in the subsequent proposal as well.
be my question too, is you see the language changes as doing the same thing.
Essentially, yes, and more around ensuring that, and we are totally amenable to ensuring that state and federal law and district policy are followed with regard specifically to non-discrimination and protections of protected classes, which of course, as we all know, includes LGBTQIA plus individuals, as well as those of a different race, religion, ethnicity, etc.
Okay. While you're waiting, I'm not sure if you had any other questions or comments, but I've got actually one I'd like to ask. And this is just a wondering, I guess, is looking back up to 22-2-1A. And maybe this is just a semantics thing, but the way I think that we were reading that is that the district would implement programs to try and accomplish that and move to those percentages. And we know that that is tough, but I think that, having that goal out there, that is the goal, not just more closely, but the percentage, that was the intent behind that. So we're going to maybe need to discuss that a little bit more, but I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that the language to us didn't mean we're going to get there or we grieve, but it was, we want that to be the goal, that we're trying to move toward that.
Yeah, and we definitely don't disagree. And we are concerned that we'll never get there. Back to the statement you said earlier about the lack of individuals going into education in the first place, any individual, and knowing that historically we've had such a shallow pool in our hiring processes of individuals that do reflect more of that diversity that we're looking for. It's aspirational. We too would love to get to that more aligned percentage to reflect our student body. And so thank you. That's very helpful to hear your thinking behind it. Oh, Rob, sorry.
Sorry.
I kind of am agreeing with the guest speaker here that there was some pretty important stuff about supporting students. That entire part was struck, and I know you just answered that it's in the state law, so it's fine. But I'll go back to a point that I've made in other bargaining sessions, that this is a very hot ticket item across the country. We're, have a lot of culture wars across the country. State legislatures change, state laws change. And I think that it's important that the district says that these are the values of the district, regardless of what happens at the state level. So I don't see harm in including that language in the contract, even if it's redundant with what's in the state law.
Or policy as well.
Policy, but having it in the contract so it's there for all to see, so that those students do feel like they're accepted and wanted and valued to be here, which I think if it gets struck, then that's a big piece of trust that's gone.
Julian, or
Rob said, I'm just going to pull this out because I can't do it. Going on with what Rob said, in our surveys to our educators, they were really explicit about they wanted very clear language that made them feel protected. And I just don't know if this is going to accomplish that.
Okay.
Yeah, can I gain some clarity from what you were just sharing, that the students feel protected by JCEA's agreement? I guess I'm a little confused by that. Or is it that the JCEA, the educators, would like to be protected when they're attempting to protect a student? Is that more of what this is?
And the students feel protected too, so that we feel comfortable protecting the student, and as a result, the student then also feels protected.
And just to share, where my thought was is that to protect the student, I would think it would be in board policy, more explicit there. And then to protect the educator who's protecting the student is what we're intending to do here.
So I think maybe where Rob was going with that was that if teachers feel protected to support their students, then the natural outcome of that will be students will feel that they're in a,
And I've had many
environment.
students who fit the description of the paragraph that got struck there, and they need emotional support in many cases in terms of, having adults who, are on their side.
Laura?
Yeah, I think going back to that, in all the surveys and our own personal experience, the educators don't feel safe providing students with those safe spaces because there is so much parent pushback. And while I appreciate referring back to state and federal law, the problem, it exists now, but it's not working. And so that's why we wanted the more specific language to really outline that teachers are allowed to help and are allowed to share who they are and be themselves to allow students to have, those mentor teachers.
As we're rewriting this particular language, I would just encourage us, either side, to take a look at the policy. Oftentimes when we literally repeat policy, I don't get any pushback for it. So just a thought, sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Can I just...
Richard.
Oh,
Yeah, I just glancing over this quickly because I pulled up SB 23296, right? And I'm reading over it. And this is just, as it should, referring to students. I don't see anything in here about educators. And this is written for the protection of educators, or am I missing something? Because I'm looking over this, and this is to SB 296 is talking about students, but then we're trying to write about something here that's for educators, right?
So the training itself is what I'm referring to from Senate Bill 23296, and it's specific. I literally copied and pasted it. It says training to all employees about harassment and discrimination, beginning no later than July 1st, 2024. That part, the training piece, is in general harassment and discrimination, and that's employee training. And so whether it is student harassment and discrimination or employee harassment and discrimination, the training is for employees. And that's the part that I was specifically referring to. The federal and state law I was referring to is other law outside of this Senate bill.
And I just wanted to add on to the discussion from a minute or two ago that, many of the students that I've had in this situation haven't actually told their parents about things. So they have, revealed things to me or to, classmates that they're like, don't tell my parents. So, I think they do need these safe spaces, and they need the teachers to feel that, they can do that without potential ramifications from the district.
Which, as I understand it from our Chief of Family and Community Partnerships, that is really well outlined in the policy and procedure for protecting students.
And we will definitely take a look at that and have that as part of our discussion. But I would also just say that there are statements within our contract that are statements of value. So we value giving educators enough time to plan their lessons. We value an evaluation process that is clear and understood, et cetera. And so I think also some of this was a statement of values, and that's why some of that, description was included. So, okay.
And please don't take our modification of protected classes as offense. Our intention was to both honor LGBTQIA plus request right now, and again, to include all other protected classes that potentially are not already mentioned somewhere in the negotiated agreement, and again, any future protected classes that may exist.
And we certainly appreciate that add-on, of course. Rob?
Can I just add, unlike the other articles we've talked about today, this language doesn't have a cost.
Mic drop.
Yes.
Oh my God. One last question. Is transgendered protected federally? Is that like if you're classified as transgender, is that protected federally as
Yes,
well?
it's part of the state and federal law. I believe the state was adopted later than the federal, but yes. I actually had the whole thing like down below as I was referring to it and just making sure that everything was aligned. I thought about just leaving it, but then I thought, we can't put that. That doesn't make any sense. So,
No, thank you. Yes, Julian.
I just want to say I'm sure we'll have a counter to this, but I see that you did agree to some language. And as far as I know, if this is TA'd and we ratify this contract, we'll be the first district in the state with any kind of language like this.
great. Thank you so much.
There are no other questions. I'd like to thank my guests for being here this evening to ask questions, to help walk us through any considerations. And I'll reach out to you guys later so we can chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Wait.
I have to go now.
Oh, I'm
Sorry,
so sorry,
Michelle.
Michelle. Other Michelle.
It's totally fine.
My
I just
bad.
wanted to, since before we move on to the next one, I will be leaving, which is, you guys can be fine without me, except for we need somebody to take the notes. Who's people put their okay, nobody can put your, we need somebody to not have their finger on their nose.
I can't do both. I have to present.
Beth's got it. All right.
Ooh, yay,
Snaps for Beth.
Don't worry, Beth. We promise to be real brief.
And we forgot to look them over during our dinner. That's right. Okay. Thank you and for being here tonight, Michelle. And we'll see you next time. So, all right. So we're going to continue on with Article 9. So Article 9 is student discipline and educator protection. And this is the District Bravo version. And I believe, Amanda, are you presenting this as well? All right.
Please hold. My computer's stuck. Okay, Article 9. Jennifer's linking it in. And I'm going to try to find it on the screen. There we go. Okay. Article 9 is our student discipline and educator assistance article. We have modified a few things and moved a few things around in this article. So first of all, starting off with 911, not to call 911, just the article 911. Hopefully Siri didn't hear me. So we have moved some things from this article because it started to talk about training, and there was more training listed down below in the article. So we just wanted to move that to align the that part. You suggested striking 912. We accepted that. And beginning in 91, what is now renumbered to 913, and I apologize I didn't re-accept your numbers, but certainly we accept the numbers. We have modified this very slightly. Students may have a safety plan, behavior support plan. Oh, whoops, sorry. I meant to put this in parentheses, which is also known as a remediation plan, or a behavior intervention plan developed to support positive behavior. And just for everyone's awareness, those are sometimes three different things. Sometimes a student with a disability has a different type of plan than a student without a disability. Sometimes a student has a safety plan that has a disability or not a disability. So these are all different plans intended to support positive behavior. Educators who interact with these students will be advised of the plans and the expectations of staff to support these students and should participate in the development of these plans when the behaviors of concern are manifesting in the classroom environment. We thought it was really important that if students' behaviors are manifesting in the classroom, that teachers should participate in the development. We modified just very slightly a weird parenthesis that existed in 914. In 916, This one's super hard to follow because there's like blue and red and crossouts and not crossouts. So here's what the new language or the new proposal says. The district will identify best practices and protocols for how to address student behavior within the District Prevention and Intervention, or P&I, manual. Schools will reference the district P&I manual as a guide when developing their site-specific policies and tiered prevention strategies, interventions, and disciplinary resources. The district P&I manual will include resources such as the discipline matrix, PBIS resources, restorative practices, school board policy, Colorado law, and other relevant information. The school's collaborative structure will address how these protocols will be implemented consistently and equitably using data and evidence-based best practices to mitigate implicit or explicit bias. Pursuant to Article 10, the school's PBST is encouraged to regularly review student behavior and discipline data, as well as perception survey data, in order to progress monitor efficacy of policies and practices and revise when appropriate. So just a couple of quick pieces of information. Initially, you had suggested that the district create differentiated by level P&I manuals that schools would then use. However, as we all know, each school has their own needs and the ability for differentiation and a differentiated approach. What one school needs around behavior management, disciplinary supports might be different than the school down the street. A school with an affective needs center might need something different than a school with an SSN center, for example. And so what we'd like to encourage is that schools use the district's P&I manual as a reference to then create we would love for every school to have their own P&I manual. And we also know that many schools don't call it a P&I manual. They might call it the Panther Principles, or they might call it a handbook. And we don't want to pigeonhole schools into a requirement and expectation that it be called a P&I manual. And so, so that's the background and reasoning for that. In 9161, we agree to a lot of the language in here. Before the first student contact day, educators will be provided with training on, and we added the words, site-specific procedures aligned to, again, the District Prevention and Intervention Manual. Educators will receive ongoing professional learning. We added in as recommended by the individual school's PBST in order to support students' behavioral needs such as social emotional learning, positive behavior interventions and supports, or PBIS, restorative practices, trauma-informed care, and de-escalation training. All staff members responsible for facilitating formal restorative conferences will receive the appropriate training by district personnel in order to ensure consistency of practice. So there is such a thing as formal restorative conferences versus simply the approach of a restorative practice conversation. There is an actual protocol and steps that are to be followed. And so just wanted to differentiate that. Not that everyone couldn't also have training in restorative practice approaches. Additionally, we did not want to require that every school have a specific number of training days or training times dedicated, as again, one school might need more, one school might need less. But we do agree that ongoing training is essential. In 9162, we have agreed to much of this. Students and parents will, and unfortunately we don't feel as though we can force students and families to learn. And so we would like to use the term be informed of the school and district-wide expectations within the first month of school. As many of you know, some of our schools are large, and to be able to get to every student within the first week of school or to get to all parents, especially if we want to do this in person, which a lot of schools do during their back-to-school nights or their curriculum nights, which usually occur within the first 3 to 4 weeks of school. And so we'd like to just expand that to the first month of school. We did move 9163 to 9164. We just dropped it down. And in 9163, we have all school employees will follow site-specific procedures that are developed collaboratively and address specifically how policy and practice will be implemented within their buildings. And then in 9164, a few modifications in addition to moving the previous language back down, pursuant to policy JKBA. If an educator removes a student from the classroom, the policy for developing a remedial behavior plan will be followed. The school administrator will debrief with the educator to determine if there is any additional support needed prior to having the student return to class. So this is straight from this policy, and it's around when a teacher removes a student from the classroom and what needs to happen next. We have 9165 actually is exactly the same thing, and so we had moved it up. In 917, we moved that language up to the part about reviewing discipline and behavior data to 916. And instead of saying TLCC data, we called it perception data, because we also have a staff perception survey. We have a principal feedback survey. We have the teaching and learning conditions in Colorado survey. We have a student perception survey. We have a family perception survey. And a lot of those ask about disciplinary practice and behavior management. And so we wanted to be more inclusive of all of our perception survey data. And finally, in aid and restitution, we have struck the language around submitting claims and the chief financial officer. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to agree to this strike, unless you wanted to bring it back eventually, but we agreed to that. And we modified it to say the district will accept, review, and honor reimbursement requests for personal property that is damaged or stolen on school property, so long as the damage is not caused by the educator, obviously. And there's that. Right? You never know. And then finally in 923, we have modified that language to say the district will review reimbursement requests submitted by the employee for all or a portion of out-of-pocket expenses, et cetera, et cetera. And this is really around when an employee is accused of something and then found to be innocent eventually. And that is all. What questions do you have?
Stephanie?
Being the behavior person that I have been for many, many years in the district, this is near and dear to my heart. The last time we presented this, we rushed out and you guys didn't have an opportunity to ask any questions before returning the language. So I didn't know if there were any questions. And some of this language was written by Christine Wiggins, so I can't necessarily be able to say that I'll be able to speak to it, but I just first want to see if there were any questions that maybe you guys had that weren't addressed that I can try and address, or the rest of the team.
So one of the things that we may have had a question on, we made an assumption that the reason that you were hoping to have a differentiated by level P&I manual that every school would adopt was for consistency. And we don't disagree with the importance of the consistency. And we believe that the autonomy of the school and the flexible decision-making in alignment with what the PBST team knows about their own school and their own school's needs would address that, as long as we ensure that the district P&I manual is being referenced. So I don't want you to think that we don't also value consistency. We absolutely do, and we 100% value system coherence, while also recognizing that this might be one of those things that needs that level of flexibility. Sorry, I don't know if that was really a question. That was my assumption.
Yeah, totally.
So, and I'm going to get to you in a second, Rob. I just want to clarify on this 9-1-6. So ultimately, it's a district P&I manual in addition to the student discipline matrix. What? So so that lives inside. And so basically the school PBST would use that as their boundaries, correct? But within a school, they could say restorative practices work better here, or maybe some other kind of discipline, such as a suspension, might be more appropriate. So as long as it's within the bounds of what's in there, the PBST can make those decisions. Okay, that is the intent. Rob.
Okay, and I might have missed this because there was a lot presented there, and I don't know, it was hard to keep track of everything. But 9165 was struck entirely, and that is saying basically a behavior plan be developed if
So
student is
that's the
habitually
language.
disruptive.
That's actually the language that exists in JKBA. So it's just it's there. We just didn't respell it out because that is literally the language from the policy. So the first time an educator removes a student, there may be a behavior plan developed. The second time they remove a student, it must be developed.
Although, didn't you just tell us that if we mirror the language of a policy in here, it was good?
I mean, typically, yes.
Like, what's the problem of having that in there? Because that, to me, behavior, particularly it seems after COVID, behavior's gotten really bad.
Right.
The kids are not as mature, maybe, as traditionally they had been. So I think spelling out expectations of behavior and plans towards behavior is really a good thing.
Yeah, it's not. It literally is the same thing. It's either you go reference policy or we put it in here. I mean, and the policy could change.
Policies change.
Sure, the policy could change, and then potentially we'd have to change this as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but I also think that our educators are much more familiar with the contract, and they go there immediately to find what they need to find. Sometimes it can be a little challenging to find stuff on the website. So we just find that if we can just hand them this contract, here's what you need to know. So sometimes having it there as well is just helpful because this is the resource that our educators use. Dale?
My question is also about 916, and it's down at the bottom quarter part of that paragraph, and it's about the TLCC data. If the discipline perception came back and it was bad, and I know you said that you put it in there. You just kind of rolled TLCC and all sorts of other things into perception survey data. And then you rattled off all these other surveys and everything. I appreciate that. I certainly appreciate that. I just wonder if perception survey data is too vague, because there could be all sorts of different surveys that take place within a school. So I don't know. Is this? My wondering is this terminology too broad to allow in a whole spectrum of views that could give you a very wildly different perception of what discipline is like within the schools?
Sure, and we could make it more specific to like the annual district perception survey. The problem with TLCC is it's only typical. Well, sometimes it's given every other year. There have been years I think we've done it year over year. But the other thing is we wouldn't want to not review survey data that on a year that it isn't given, because we might still have it in all these panorama surveys that we've been doing, which is our new, like we're trying to put everything into panorama now. So the annual family survey, which used to be family community partnership survey, and then the student survey, which used to be make your voice heard, and then the employee survey, which in addition to TLCC is all living in the panorama system now. What we didn't want to do is call it panorama perception survey data, because who knows if it will always be panorama. But we could always be more specific, and we could put TLCC in parentheses or including TLCC, something like that we'd be amenable to. Rob?
So this time, really, really minor point. 9143. When you were editing, you took out a word of the original, like current language, after remediation that's now in brackets, there should be a plan.
Sorry about that.
So, minor point, but just to keep it, whatever. So that should be in black, as it should be remediation space plan. And that should be black because it's like current language.
Sorry about that.
And that, yeah, I know it's just in editing it got.
I realized I did it right after I did it, and then I just kept going. Stephanie?
I think my question is, and I'm trying to find it right now, on the types of plans. Obviously, if they have a student is serviced with an IEP, there's all kinds of training and stuff around behavior plans. But in all the years, I'm not sure, and I'm just wondering what training is provided to administrators and others in the building as to what those plans might look like if they are required after a second removal, not suspension, not what is entailed and documented in those plans, because I have never really been involved in that, and which is weird considering what I've done my entire career. So I'm just curious what training might go on or happen that we might need to enhance to help people better understand what, including the whole system, not just administrators, but all staff, so that we can make sure, because I think one of the biggest things that is just really lays on my heart is we create plans that require so much of educators that they end up either not able to implement what needs to happen with fidelity, which then requires them to lie about how they're implementing something. And that is just not a good feeling for anybody. And we are asking educators to do way too much. Talking about taking something off their plates, we have to start shifting some of the responsibility off of their backs for student behavior, that it can't always be the educator's fault that a student is refusing to do work or is throwing chairs or whatever else. And so I just want to make sure that those plans don't put more work on educators.
Completely agree. And that is two things. We would never expect an educator to write a plan by themselves and be the author of that plan, as well as the executor of the plan, as well as the responder if the plan works or doesn't work. We would certainly want administrative support in writing those. I agree. I think training would be great around what should this look like? How do I do this effectively in my classroom? And from 9143, that's one of the reasons that we would stamp that educators should participate in the development of these plans, right? One of my frustrations is when an administrator writes a plan and gives it to a teacher and says, do this. It's not a reasonable request or expectation. The educator knows the limits of their ability within the classroom. They know their time constraints. They know their movement constraints. They have to be able to participate and say, I can't do that, but I can do this. And I actually wanted to put the word will, and I got vetoed. Which I also understand, because sometimes the behavior isn't manifesting in this classroom's teacher's environment, but it is in this classroom. So should all of the teachers that see that student have to be involved? Not necessarily. And if it's something that's occurring in the hallway, should the homeroom teacher have to be present? Maybe not. Maybe it's a different intervention that doesn't require classroom teacher support in that case. So I understand why I got vetoed on will.
Okay, any other questions or clarifications? All right, well, we will take this back and have our discussions around it and return when we are prepared to do so. Okay, So at this point, our last article of this evening is Article 12. And so Article 12 is hiring, staffing, and displacement. And I will be doing my best to walk us through this. Full disclosure, I think I have it linked in the agenda. The problem is because of the way my two two Google accounts work, I can't put it into the folder. So can somebody that has access, can you try and make a copy maybe and put it in the folder? That might be a way to do it, because normally, for our staff people, everything is housed in one Google account for them, and for us, it's different. So rejoin. Okay, I need to rejoin momentarily. Join now. All right, so I'm connecting to Teams, and so I think that you might need to let me back into Teams. I just got tired of waiting on me not doing anything. Okay, so I believe at this point I can share my screen. Okay. Which I hope this works this time. Oh, okay. There we go. All right. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that are in the room. Is that big enough? Let me try 150. 150. All right, perfect. Thank you. So in this first part of this, we hadn't highlighted it yet because we weren't really sure. We thought it had moved somewhere else, but we weren't sure why, or if it was struck completely. I don't remember either, and I thought it had been moved down below, but I couldn't exactly remember where. So can we put an asterisk by this? And then if you guys happen to recall where that change made, then we would like to know that, because we've gone through it a number of times, and we just couldn't remember the conversation around it, like either why it was struck or where it was moved to. So that has not yet been highlighted. And again, with all the numbers, we just haven't highlighted. Well, when we get to the end, we'll go back and change the numbering. So that's why those haven't been highlighted either. So we've accepted all of your changes in 12 and 12-1, I guess. And then we've added in 12-1-2 that the district will not hire contracted employees except in the case of emergencies when insufficient applicants have applied and the position cannot be filled. In the event of such emergency situation, the district will provide data to the JCA president, proving that no qualified candidates applied for and accepted the position. Maybe that should say and or. All contracted positions will be temporary and will be regularly posted as regular positions in the JCA bargaining unit until the position or positions are filled. So we just added that in just so that we can kind of keep track of these contracted positions and what's, so if we need to do some digging as to why are these positions not being filled, what are some possible solutions, so just so that we can have a more of a partnership around those contracted positions with the district. In 12-1-2, we've accepted one of your changes, and then we did strike, in general, the hiring cycle will conclude by mid-July. We just felt that this didn't need to be in here, and also because it doesn't a lot of times, we're hiring for positions sometimes throughout the year, and so we just don't think that needs to be in there. On 12-1-3, we accepted your changes there, and then added that the positions will be advertised on multiple platforms to increase the number and diversity of applicants, and that Human Resources will work with JCA in reviewing those platforms. So should something come up that, hey, this is a great place to post a job, or we can get to applicants that, as that changes, we can work together to continue posting jobs and attracting people to Jeffco. In this next section, 12-1-X, we've accepted your changes. Continuing down, we've accepted these changes, I think all of them in this next couple of sections, till we get down to 12-1-3-2. The selection committee will review the job description instead of have the opportunity. It's a semantic change, but we feel it's important. And then we've accepted the rest of those changes down to 12-1-3-4. So on this, what we added was some language saying that Human Resources will create guidelines for authentic tasks for the sake of consistency, efficiency, and streamlining the application process, particularly for applicants applying to multiple schools. So we had this come up with the school closures where we had some teachers applying for 20 jobs and they had 20 different tasks. And they were just completely overwhelmed with the amount of things they had to prepare. And so if we could maybe work together to figure out how to streamline, like here's 5 possible authentic tasks you might be asked to do and be prepared for. So maybe some more systemness within that process would be good to help those educators. We've accepted this next change, and I think it's noted where it was moved. Accepted all of I'm just going to scroll down to 12-1-8. So we added for the principal or central supervisor, in case we are not in a school setting, and accepted the selection change to the language. And then 12 whatever this is now, we've crossed it out apparently. So educators on temporary contracts may import their non-probationary status once they have an ongoing contract. So and the district will advise them of this opportunity. What was happening is that teachers were coming from other districts. We were getting them from other districts, but then they were being hired on a temporary contract. And then by the time they got hired ongoing, their time had lapsed for when they could import it. And so we just want to make sure that they can still do that if we get them on a temporary contract, let's say, and then we want to keep them. We want them to be able to import that status. So we've accepted changes under reassignment. I'm just going to scroll down. We've accepted all of those going down to 12-3-4, or maybe 12-3-2. We just changed it to positions typically characterized by split school because they're not always teaching positions. So we just removed that word, and we've added in digital teacher librarians, social emotional learning specialists, and SPED, because sometimes those folks as well are in split school assignments, and we want them covered under this language as well. And then at the bottom of that section, positions which are increased to full-time by the school and then reduced in a later year will be repaired, so that they have that opportunity. Moving down to displacement, we've accepted your changes all the way down to 12-4-3. So the displaced educators at the district level will be identified within the department or team with which they are assigned after collaborative budget and staffing discussions to address the needs of the schools and district programs and utilizing a rubric as described below. So we just want that to mirror what's going on within our school buildings under the OLT, and we think that those educators at the district level should be part of that as well. Okay, we've accepted those changes all the way down to 12-4-5, and so we just only called out that it was a Jcea district co-created rubric. So we just added that in there. And moving down to that letter D, one of the established collaborative committees will determine the criteria for the portion of the rubric that is customized for each school or department. So again, I think this came back to the discussion where some schools that were smaller may have a dual OLT, ALT situation. So whatever committee they have that's going to be looking at that could make those decisions. Continuing down, we've accepted basically all your changes, moving until here. And so, and I just want to point this out. I've rewritten it down below. However, so Lisa Elliott, you can see the note that she made. I think this should be moved back into the part-time section. So it was just about the placement. We didn't change any of the language. You're just going to see it down below. So we just weren't sure where it was best placed, and Lisa thought it should go with part-time. So that's why that's there, to call that out. We did accept the change that you included. So when we get down to that, I'll just remind us. 12-4-10. So once again, we've just added in district level positions with the split school, digital teacher librarian, social emotional learning specialist, and SPED. Okay, so we accepted changes, moving down to 12-4-15. So we're adding in every effort will be made to place a displaced educator in a position conveniently located for the educator geographically. Now we understand if there's only one position in the district, that's the position. But if there are 3 and one of them is closer to where they live, we just don't want somebody who is displaced. So let's say from Chatfield to then, and we're going to offer you Stanley Lake or something, or up in Conifer, they can always, if that's the only position, obviously, but if there's something closer, we want to make that effort for them. And so we've accepted the rest of these changes. Moving down, Yep, so those are all highlighted. Highlight administrative transfer highlighted. Opening, closing of schools we've accepted. Educator exchange has been accepted. And then down to 12-8-2. So I guess the change that we made is the educator chooses not to accept the position. Then down below, if the position is declined, then the normal hiring procedures will begin. So if they don't want that position and if they, give up their right of first refusal, then we'll start. So that was the one change added. 12-8-4. So we've accepted the language, the changes that you've made, but then also added this applies when the educator never held the position full time. So we had some concerns. I believe this came up where at a school they said, okay, you're a full-time FTE as the DTL or whatever it is. We have numbers. Would you be willing to do a 0.8 next year? And so sure, I'll do the 0.8 next year. But then the following year, the numbers come back up. Oh, you have to reapply for your job. They already held it full time. They agreed to go down to 0.5 to address the maybe the lower population that year. They should be able to then continue in that position, because they were probably doing it as a favor to the building, and maybe they were also okay with it. So we just wanted to add that in. 12-8-9. Okay, this was the part that we moved back. So this was that language from up above with your changes included that we just moved down below to this section. And okay, so so all the rest of the changes in that section were accepted. Job sharing, the change in 12-10-2, we just had some discussion around the fact that, especially with a job share, with all of them, February 1st is really soon. Sometimes within a semester to make that decision, we thought March 1st would be acceptable since March 15th seemed to be the deadline for displacements at any rate. And so we thought March 1st might give people a little extra time to make those decisions. And that's it. That's the end of Article 12. And I'm sure if you've got questions, I will try my best to answer them. Or people on my team will, but we can always take questions back to Lisa as well. We will wait. Wait time is an important part of instructional pedagogy. Mike?
My question is in 12-1-2, where it talks about hiring contracted employees. My assumption is that we're hiring contracted employees primarily where those are hard to fill positions and we're trying to backfill with contracted employees.
Correct.
I would also guess that we're hiring contracted employees for the purposes of not creating ongoing positions, right? Possibly strategic work that is short-term in nature. So I would just invite anybody on the team to speak to that in terms of contracted employees and how that, what our current practice is. Just because, again, I wouldn't want to not hire contracted employees because we put something in the negotiated agreement when we need some contracted employees to handle a certain project for a short period of time.
And we agree with that, which is why we put all contracted positions will be temporary, right? If it's ongoing, it would be posted, and we just want to be included. Like, what is the situation? Is it because it's just a job that's only going to last a year or two, or is it because we're having a tough time attracting applicants to this position that maybe we can problem solve? What do we need to do then?
Gotcha.
All right, Steve.
Thank you. I do have a few questions. Let's start at the top. 12-1-3-4, where human resources will create guidelines for such authentic tasks for the sake of consistency and efficiency and streamlining. If I heard your concern correctly, Michelle, it's around the folks that are displaced, ROFs, and those that are displaced, or
Well, that's how it came to us as an interest from our members. Is they were calling and they're like, I'm so overwhelmed. I've got to apply for 20 positions, and I'm being asked to, prepare all these different things, and I don't know, what do I do? And so that was where the concern came from.
okay. And I just and I asked that for the clarification, and I appreciate it, because as I understand these are generally things that are specific to the school, so that they can get a better understanding of how that individual might fit into their school and their program that they have there. So I'm not sure that we'll talk as a team,
Yeah.
but I'm just not.
But I think that guidelines, if HR can say, hey, here's some guidelines for, this person wants you to teach a lesson, and maybe this person wants a portfolio, and this person wants, so what kind of guide, so that somebody's like, all right, I don't have to create 20 different things. I might be asked to create maybe 5, if that makes sense.
Right.
So so some guidelines on what that might look like, because, if every single building has a completely different task, it can be onerous. So maybe just looking at creating some, and also, every, different schools might have different needs based on their student population, for sure. But, maybe being asked to teach a lesson, that could be, an authentic task that many different schools could do, just aimed at that population of students.
All right. Thank you. 12-4-15. Every effort will be made to place a displaced educator in a position conveniently located for the educator geographically. I just want to make sure that once we've placed them, though, and maybe something opens up closer to their home, our obligation has been met, correct? I mean, then we're not trying to change that piece of this, are we?
I don't think that was the intent. So if a displaced educator so there's one position open and you're placed, and then
2 weeks
2
later,
weeks later, if something opens
something
up,
in your neighborhood opens up.
right? Then I suppose they could
They can apply by all
to
means.
that position, but they wouldn't, if they've already accepted the displaced position based on, I don't know what else will open up.
And maybe I'm getting hung up on every effort. So that's maybe where I'm just getting hung up a little bit on that. But okay, thank you. And then my last one, 12-8-4. And I think this is just more of a learning moment for me, because I'm not familiar with how the signed contracts work here in Jeffco. So if I sign a contract at 1.0 and now, 5 years down the road, I'm asked to reduce down to a 0.8 because that's the need that the building has, and I'm the educator that steps up and says, I'll take the 0.2 reduction. Is my contract in this district still at 1.0, or am I now reduced down to a 0.8? And maybe it's a question I need to ask internally.
Yeah, I think that, because I think there is a lack of clarity around that. Because I know, I'll just say in my particular building, we have a position where the number of students taking the German classes just dropped. And so the teacher was like, they could have gone to another school, or they could have stayed there to provide that instruction at 0.8. And so that teacher agreed to do so. But if we went back up to a full time, she'd want to stay there, and we don't think it'd be appropriate for her to have to reapply for her job. But based on this language, it kind of seems like if it goes from full time, do you see what I mean?
I do completely. And that's what I remember the discussion last time being around, was equal pay for equal work, right? And so we wouldn't want somebody, because you can't promote somebody, and additional FTE is in a sense promoting somebody because their pay is increasing. But what I'm trying to get to is, if their contract is at 1.0, they voluntarily reduced, let's say, for a year down to 0.8, but they're still contracted at a 1.0. We as a district still, in a sense, owe them that 1.0. And so it wouldn't have to go through equal pay for equal work necessarily.
No, Steve, that's not correct. If they reduce to a 0.8, their contract becomes a 0.8.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
You have more experience in our HR office, and I appreciate that.
So, Michelle,
where I came from, when you were allowed to temporarily reduce for 1 or 2 years because it was helping the school out in that kind of instance. So sorry, Dale.
No, you're fine. The intent here, what has happened in the past, there have been instances where an administrator has conflict or whatever with an employee in their building. And then they go to the employee and say, well, we've got to reduce your position to a 0.5 or a 0.6 or point, whatever, 0.6. Otherwise, your position's not going to be here. So they take the 0.6, and then the following year, we've had administrators increase it back to a 0.1 or to a 1.0, and then tell that employee, you need to reapply for your job. And they reapply, and they don't get the job, and now they're out of the building. And that's happened a couple of different times. So that's the intent, to prevent that from happening.
Thank you, Dale. Were you okay? So Rob?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of address Mike's point from a little
Sure.
while ago.
Mhm.
In terms of like the contract employee, I think part of the reason for this is that there's some concern that if you hire contract employees, often that is at a much greater cost, both in terms of the amount that's being paid to those people, and then any overhead that whatever service you have, is also included. So you're going to have to pay the salary, plus you have to pay the overhead of whatever company is providing the service of finding that employee. And again, from what I was saying about the person I talked to who had, and again, this was a JESPA example, but had 2 aides who were contract employees. We don't want that sort of a situation happening in JCA bargaining unit where all of a sudden, we can't find a science teacher, so we're going to hire a contract one. And, since we can't find them and they're hard to fill, we're going to pay, $200,000 for the contract person. But yes, we found someone. And that adds up. So if, Stanley Lake gets a $200,000 science contract person, and then, whatever, Pomona gets one and Green Mountain gets one, and if that spreads throughout, pretty soon you're going to have a significant part of the budget is paying these contract employees, when maybe the problem could be solved by taking the money that's going to the contract employees, that difference in money, and putting it into the salary schedule and getting a higher salary schedule, and then you attract more employees. So, that would, so I guess what we're wanting is, if there's a need to increase salary, which I think we all agree there is a need to be competitive. And rather than going about it in a piecemeal fashion and saying, oh, we need to hire this person and this person, this person to fill the gaps, we need to create an environment where the whole system goes up so that there aren't these gaps, and address the needs of the JCA members, not hiring contract. And we saw that in nursing too, where all of a sudden contract nurses earn twice what the resident nurses. And I think it made a lot of resentment in the nursing community when you're going day to day to your job, and all of a sudden this person comes in for a month and earns more than you do in 6 months, and I think it ticked a lot of nurses off.
Thanks. I just wanted to speak to that a little bit. I don't have the exact data, but I know last year when special education was hit hard with contractors, Matt Polero did a cost analysis between what it would cost us as a district to hire directly special education teachers and the contract teacher, Jcea. And it was very little difference, if any. The cost was basically the same for that contracted position versus hiring directly. That is not the case for our JESPA, sorry, I'm tired. My words are not coming easily. For our JESPA contracted employees. So I can speak to that in the analysis that we did last year, and I can get some more of that specific data. But Matt and I have talked about that at length because of our need to contract teachers.
As a quick counterpoint, though, it would be diluting the JCA bargaining unit and kind of going against the spirit of the contract, where you're now splitting up and filling jobs that are JCA jobs with not union members. So
Don't disagree. We just don't have applicants for special education, and we're required to provide the services.
yeah, and thank you for the clarification.
Totally don't disagree.
Matt,
Yeah, I
Matt
appreciate
also emphasizes that the goal is to get them in and then hire them into our positions instead of continuing them under contracts.
And we have had multiple conversations with our HR friends and our purchasing friends about how to buy some of those contracts if and when we can, to perhaps recruit them into Jeffco employees so that we can hire them directly from those places. So we're working on those.
We would love to be a partner with you on finding those solutions. Sorry, Anthea. Oh, and Steph. Gosh, Anthea, and then Stephanie.
I do think Rob has a point, just making sure that we have some of that information, because my concern with that is that I have had a new OT every year for the past 3 years, and they were contracted positions. So if we were really if they were commensurate, like very similar in terms of what we're paying out for the contract and then what an actual salary is, I feel like we would have people stay, because I have had conversations with OTs and they're like, it's just not as much. So again, I'm not saying that that's not what Matt found. I just think we need to have some actual factual pieces to it, because then we wouldn't be trying to solve this problem of keeping people in the district, especially in those, because we've had some really good OTs. And again, that's just one scenario. I know there's more contracts than that, but I think that hard data would be really helpful in trying to solve this problem. So
We're talking about 2 different data points. It's the cost to the district versus the take-home pay. And that's a significant difference in what it costs us to contract with a company for those positions versus what they actually take home, including insurance, para, like all of those different pieces. So it's the same for us. They are likely taking home a different salary.
sorry. And again, I just think that's educating the table, just so when we have these conversations, we are knowledgeable in that, in terms of the district cost versus the take home and just those pieces, because again, we can only speculate as of now.
Stephanie?
And I think it's twofold. I'm glad we have the numbers. I personally know somebody who contracts, and in the month of October, she made $16,000 in a year. So, and that's her personal on top of whatever the contracting company she works with. So, it is, like what that is. But then on top of it, her workload is significantly less, because she's a psychologist, so she's only doing testing, but so the work-life balance is a huge payoff as well. So her take home and then what she is allowed. Now, granted, that month was very lucrative, but then the least amount she has taken home is $10,000 a month. So she's still taking home a significant amount and has way less work stress as well. So I think on top of that, going back to everything we've talked about, that work-life balance and pay is going to be a huge factor in how we balance everything.
Steve?
Just along those lines, Stephanie, the take home that she had was $16,000 or $10,000. Does that after taxes, and is that after her liability insurance and everything else? She's still taking home that kind of money? Okay.
Maria? Did you? That's okay. Just don't want to miss any. Okay, any other? Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, I just put it up. I was waiting until the end to make sure it was relevant, not counterintuitive to what people were talking about. So I believe that I heard you say at the beginning that you weren't sure about 12.1, which we struck, because that's all about the hiring committee and who's on the hiring committee and who makes up the hiring committee and the final decision making, and that's all included. So when you look at 12-1-3-1, it talks about at least 1/3, but no less than 2 of the members of the selection committee will be educators selected by their peers and in partnership with the hiring manager. Talks about who should be included on that in terms of the appropriate grade level and or department where the vacancy exists. So that language is inclusive in under hiring in a couple of different ways, but that's the biggest one where you see it.
Okay, so that had moved down to 12-1-3-1.
I don't think it really moved. I think it was already there. So it's sort of like
duplicative.
repetitive language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jennifer, 12.1 definitely isn't about mutual consent, right?
No. Well, I think it's just about hiring.
So I thought it was, I actually thought this was no longer true. Because of the displacement process, technically an educator can be assigned to a school without the consent of a hiring principal. That's why I thought that maybe you crossed it out, because I thought it was all about mutual consent versus displacement. But I also see what you're saying around the two educators part down below.
Yeah, when I went back to reread it after you brought it up, Michelle, I did see that word assigned, and that's not really a process. Like, we don't assign educators. They have to apply and be hired in mutual consent. So I think it's both.
Okay.
I think it's both things.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. I thought that I had remembered some of that from the discussion, but I just couldn't. Apparently, I didn't have it in my notes exactly what happened to it. So, okay. And great. Any other questions, concerns, clarifications? All right.
I'll add one more thing. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
About the portability piece that you added.
Yeah.
So we're kind of configuring temporary contracts anyway, so there will be a limited number of temporary contracts. And so our portability process has been updated to reflect that any educator requesting portability, regardless of their contract status, will be considered based on the review and the required documentation. So just as an FYI.
Okay, and where was that found at, or what? Where is this new portability status?
Oh, there's a document available to educators externally and internally for porting status, and also a part of their onboarding. It's in their hiring information for how they port status.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate that. All right. Okay, so at this point, we have come to the conclusion of our agenda items. We are not going to do counter proposals this evening. In terms of setting the agenda, do you want to go ahead and put things on there right now? Or do you want to wait and we'll inform people on Tuesday after we speak?
Sure. At a minimum, well, I say we're going to bring this, we would like to bring back 5, 8, and 11. Now, 8 and 11, we've been working on. 5, I've been working on. And 5 is going to be our tentative one. But 8 and 11, definitely. I think we should be able to bring back 12 that you just brought to us.
I would say tentative on that just to make sure that we get.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
12 was Jennifer's whole article.
No worries. But we just want to make sure with some of the additions that, and Jen has chatted me saying that she wants to meet. So I would say tentative on 12. We should be able to get there, but tentative.
Sounds good. Those are our minimums.
All right, great. We will for sure be bringing Article 24 AMP. So that's an alpha. Yeah, so we'll be bringing that next Thursday, and then any other additional, I'll let you know on Tuesday. So we got to meet with whomever's available to meet and see what we can bring.
Sounds good.
All right. At this time, if people want to read through the joint communication below and make any changes that might need to be made, I guess I'm still sharing here so you can kind of see where we're at. I will stop sharing my screen at this time.
And while you all are doing that, Amanda, while you're sharing your screen, can you go to the ESS internal webpage? I wanted to let you all know that I have taken the liberty of creating an ongoing Google Doc of all of our joint communication and updating it each week so that it's posted on the negotiations page for people to have access to. So I just thought I would show you where that is in case folks ask or are interested. So go to About and go scroll all the way over to the right and down.
It's my first time using a computer. Where at?
I think it's all, is there more under there or no? Okay, try staff resources, sorry. Sometimes I forget where it is too. Is negotiations.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, go to 2024. And you can see that link under joint community. Yep. So I've just taken that and created that for people to access. So if people are interested and want to know, it's there for everybody. And it's just an ongoing, it goes from bottom all the way up to the top. So just as an FYI.
Thank you. I'm glad you showed me how to find it. I just search it every time. I should bookmark it.
As people are reading through the notes, if you are good with it, you can do a thumbs up. And I also want to remind everybody that we are going to be at JCEA next Thursday. And so if you'd like to join us for bargaining, and we certainly invite you to do so, we will be there starting at 4:30. And that's located on Colfax and Nelson. So are we good on those? All right. So thanks to our whole table here for the discussions this evening, and we will look forward to seeing you all again next Thursday. So get home safe, everyone.